Welcome everyone to another session of TriTech University. My name is Bill Steppen, and today we're going to take a closer look at the functions of grids in the AIM software. Now, basically, a grid is any table that you can access anywhere in the program that used to be we would have to program specifically a way to be able to sort or otherwise search in any given column. But now, thanks to the architecture of version 12, you have the ability to sort on any column. You can do filters on a lot of columns, and we're going to take a closer look at that today. First things first, just a few ground rules for the session. We are using GoToWebinar like we have in the past, and what you're going to be able to do is in that GoToWebinar control panel, there's going to be a questions box. So if at any point you have a question, feel free to drop that into that questions box, and I will help out and answer that any way that I can. 1 second here. We're also broadcasting from the home office of TriTech University today, so you'll have to just bear with me as we all kind of get used to the wonderful world that is the coronavirus pandemic. But anyway, let's go ahead and just recover what I was mentioning about these ground rules. So in the GoToWebinar toolbar, there is a questions box. If you have a question, feel free to go ahead and type it into there, and I'll do my best to answer those as we go along. If that GoToWebinar toolbar is taking up too much screen real estate, there is a little orange button there with a white arrow in it. Feel free to click on that, and that will shrink it out of the way so that you can see more of my screen and less of GoToWebinar's, and then that way you can get the full immersive experience. So without further ado, let me go ahead and find some grids that we can use as examples for today's webinar. So probably the couple that are the most helpful kind of right off the bat can be found in customer history. And we can go into point of sale and pull up any given customer account. And we can then click on the account balance button or this button here, this field here for the outstanding fields. And then that pulls up customer history. Let's click on go, and this will pull up our invoice history. Now, we've already been actually seeing some examples of some grids, right, as we kind of go through that. So this is a grid, and this is a grid, and this is a grid, and this is a grid. So basically all these different tables that make up the detail in the program are available for you to sort. Let's take a closer look at how this works. So like I said before, in version 12, or excuse me, version 11 and older, we used to have to specifically program in which of these columns were sortable. But now, thanks to version 12, you can click on any column, and you'll notice that that little arrow has appeared above this invoice column. So right now it's sorting by invoice number. Now it's sorting still by invoice number, but in opposite directions. So you can see how that changed from the smallest number on top to the largest number on the bottom. Now it's in the opposite order. And basically, you can click on any column, and it will go ahead and sort by any amount that you see there, or any field and any data in that column. While we're here, let me go back to the invoice field here. And if you are coming from version 11 and coming into version 12, and you might be wondering, well, where's the field where I can search by invoice number or by date or anything like that? And we don't have to have those in version 12 anymore, because every column is completely searchable. These little sub boxes below every grid header are a filter box, and you'll notice that some of them say contains, some of them say equals, and the idea there is that you can click into that box and that gives you a little sub search. So then let's say I wanted to specifically look up a particular invoice number, let's say 1012, and it takes me right to it. I don't have to worry about wading through every single listing here in this system. Or let's say I wanted to search by a particular date. I could come over here and I could say 3/6 of 2020, and it would go through and basically find any of those dates in there. Now that is very specifically coded in a certain way there when it comes to those date fields. But you're not limited to just contains or equals. Let's say I wanted to find a range or a specific other type of thing. Every column, you might have been wondering what this little button here is, and that's a filter button. It lets you change the filter for that column. So you'll notice if I click on this, this is going to come up and give me some extra options here. Right now it defaults to contains, but maybe I wanted to say does not contain. And let's say if I switch it with that, then if I go in and put in that 1012, basically it's going to show me every invoice that isn't 1012. Or let's say I change that to starts with. If I put in a 0 there, you'll notice it doesn't come up with anything, but if I put a 1 in there, and that kind of goes in that very specific, it's now looking for everything where it starts specifically with that combination of characters. It's not simply just it contains it. Other options that you might see in there, ends with, equals, not equal to, is null or is not null. Null basically means is it empty. A custom option is empty or is not empty. And this also gets us into some other options here when it comes to these tables, these grids. So you'll see that there's some options in here. This is actually showing me basically the right click functions that are also available in there, such as printing gift receipts, reprinting the originals. These are kind of unique specifically to this invoice table in the customer history. But you might also notice there's options in here for export data from grid, print data from grid, scrollable columns. So basically what this lets you do is, let's say that you've tweaked out this data in a certain way and you want to get a hard copy of it. And you don't want to have to try and figure out if there's an applicable report in our report catalog for it or anything like that. So what you can do is you can do a straight export of this data. When you choose the export data, it'll come up and it'll ask you, hey, what is the file format you'd like to save, and where do you want it to be saved, and what do you want it to be called? So let's just go ahead, print this to the desktop as customer invoices. I'm going to go ahead and save this. And then back on our desktop here, and I don't know if you can see my desktop. Actually, I've gone ahead and unshared the desktop here. So let me go ahead and just show the whole screen here. That way you can see that. And so there is our customer invoices. I'll just go ahead and double click on it. And basically what we were just seeing in the grid back in AIM is now available right here for us to review. And I'll just make that date column bigger there so you can see that it is what it is. It found us exactly what we had from our AIM system. So we can go back in here and you can see it's basically that exact same data, just like we saw there. Pretty cool, huh? If you wanted to print it out, you could do the same thing. You can right click, you can just say print data from grid, and then it will come up and it'll ask you what printer do you want to send that to. It'll show you a print preview, all that wonderful fun stuff. So hopefully that's helpful. Let me go ahead and I'm not going to save that. Let's go back into AIM. And some other functions that you might find handy, also kind of along those lines of the filtering functionality, you can filter on multiple columns simultaneously. So that can be especially helpful. Let's go back to this contains box, and let's actually, you know what? Let's go ahead and jump out of customer history entirely. Let's maybe look at some other options that are available in the system. Let's take a look, for example, in display inventory. So we're going to go into display inventory. I'm just going to do a general search of everything. And obviously you can pre-filter some of this data, you know, on the selection criteria. You can filter by category, subcategory, manufacturer. You can type in some search criteria up at the top. But basically what this lets you do, let's go over to here. And let's say that I wanted to cast as wide of an initial net as possible and then drill down from there. Let's say that I know that I'm looking for flutes. So I could come up here and I could type in flute. Okay, there, great. There's all my flutes that I have in my system. Let's say I wanted to filter down from there to any Selmer flutes. So I can see how without having to go back and change my selection criteria, I'm just filtering on the fly. I can basically change whatever I want to change. And if I want to change it from there, well, I simply go ahead and take out my filter and I start typing in a different filter. So that's kind of cool in my opinion, as far as some of the search functionality. You might find it really helpful when we're taking a look at other areas too, because what you can do in some areas of the program is you can tweak which columns are actually present and showing you data. So just to exemplify that, let's take a look at the View Bank Accounts program here in General Ledger. When you're viewing bank accounts, and I think this was the program that has the function here, but we've got a couple of different grids here. So on the left-hand side, you've got the different checking accounts, and then over on the right, you've got the fields that are showing up. If you right-click on the grid headers, you can see that there's some options there for some of those functions like we talked about. So the sort ascending, sort descending, you can tweak those and toggle those just by left-clicking on it. But the other thing you can do is you can do a column chooser. And when you do a column chooser, and this isn't the right table, nor will this one be probably, I think I'm in the wrong program. Let me just see if I can remember which program this was in here. View Ledger Account. This is the program that I wanted. So let's go ahead and take a look at a ledger account. Hopefully I've got one in here that has some kind of activity to it. There we go, perfect. So you can see when I'm viewing this ledger account, it's showing me the date, the source code, the reference number, the description, and then whether or not that activity is a debit or a credit. But if I right click and I go to the column chooser, then I've got some other options here as far as what columns I want to see. Maybe I'm not concerned with the source code. I can click and I can drag that out. That frees up some space here on my grid. And let's say instead of the source, I wanted to pull in the employee, and I wanted the employee in between description and debit or credit. I can plop that right in there. And now I'm able to browse by employee. And again, basically the idea here is that anything that you do to the table, if I go ahead and exit out of this and then come back into it, so modules, ledger, and view ledger account, it will have remembered my specific settings for my specific login. So it has my preferences as far as that grid is concerned. And just like we talked about already, when you're viewing a grid, let me go ahead and pull that same account back up here. Anything that you do from there, you can then tweak and sort and filter. And again, that is then exportable and printable. Some other functions that you might want to do, maybe you do want to see all this activity, but you want to group it by one of these columns. Let's say we wanted to group it by, and I don't think we have multiple employees in here, but let's go ahead and group it by the reference number. So we can right click on the reference number column and we can say group by this column. And you'll notice this changes this around a little bit. So now it comes up at the top here and it says grouping by reference. And we're seeing the specific references now. So we're seeing reference beginning balance, reference category 1, category 10, category 11. And now I can click on each of these little arrows there and see the specific details of beginning balance in this case. So these are the two entries that went into there. This might be even more helpful back in customer history. So let's go back to customer history. We'll go back into point of sale, pull up Mr. Anderson. which is, I never get tired of saying Mr. Anderson. So let's go ahead, pull up customer history, go into the invoice history again. And now let's go ahead and right click on the type column and group by that. So this can be especially helpful if you've got a large customer with a huge amount of history on it, and you want to be able to easily sort through all the different types of sales that are on the account. You can simply group by that column. Now we're grouped by type, and now we can see at a glance all of the cash sale activity. We can see the order deposits. We can see the service tickets. We can see all these different things kind of grouped together, so that way it's easier to find and filter. You want to change the order, you can simply click on that column, that group type button up there, and it changes the grouping order. This lets you also, for what it's worth, sort by multiple columns. You can see how if down here, I can't really change or have multiple sort factions. So right now I'm sorting by both type and by date. Do I no longer want to group by type? No problem. Simply click on the X there, and that will go ahead and bring it back down to where it was before. Now, one important function here, and this is where you all come in, is that this whole concept of these grids and the fact that you can do custom exports and print jobs and stuff like that becomes especially helpful for those of you, our clients, where you've in the past maybe requested certain types of reports. You want to see a certain amount of data filtered in a certain way, and it has to include this type of detail. Well, if we have a grid for it that completes most of those criteria, but maybe you're just missing a certain column, it's very easy for us on our development side to be able to add a column here kind of on your request, as long as it makes sense. Like obviously looking here at invoice details, we're not going to be able to add a column there that says, for example, ledger number, because, well, that really doesn't apply. But if it makes sense to add that kind of column chooser to the grid, then by all means, we can certainly do that. We can push that out in one of our regular weekly updates, and then without having to do a whole lot of custom coding, you can then go ahead and take advantage of that with these custom formatting and sorting, filtering functions. So that's the idea of grids. Now, like I said, basically anywhere where you see those tables, those are grids. So that is really helpful in my one opinion. If you take this functionality and run with it, especially if you're coming from version 11, the one place where this really helps is employee security. If we take a look at admin and employee security and employee groups, employee groups are where you can go to secure things out in the program. And let's say that you want to make sure that your salespeople can't do anything with cost functionality. So what you could do is you could come over here to the permissions tab for salespeople, and in the secured column field, you could type in cost. And here's all the functions that talk about cost, allow the ability to see cost, display weighted cost, display maintenance cost. You don't want them to have any of that, so you filter by that option, and you come down and you say set all to no access. All in this case is referring to the 4 filtered records here. So I go ahead and say set all to no. I save that, and now if I take away the cost filter, you can see they still have access to these other functions, but they no longer have access to cost. Hopefully that makes sense. You can see how this becomes a very powerful search function for anywhere where there's a grid. Do you not want them to have anything to do with accounts payable? No worries, simply start typing in accounts payable. There's all of our accounts payable. Let's go ahead and finish that out there. There's the 2 options there for accounts payable. And basically you go ahead and do the same thing. General ledger, basically modules as a whole, you can go ahead and you can filter those out and search by them. Maybe you only want them to have access to the service module. So again, you can take that same concept. Let's say you had a column over here or a group for service technicians, and you didn't want them to have anything except the service functions. You could come over here to the filter for secured item and switch that to say does not contain, type in service. Now basically everything not relating to services is here, and you could go ahead and set all to no so that the service functions still remain. Make sense? Hopefully. That's kind of the idea there. Now, there might be a few things there where you don't want to cast as wide a net. Like, for example, in that example I just gave, you might want to also then make sure that they have access to things like point of sale and stuff like that if they are going to be able to go into and cash out a sale at point of sale and do some other things with that. But you can see how it's much easier now to go through and definitely wade through and pinpoint the specific areas that you want to target, because obviously this list is it's got some options in there. You could definitely take a long time going through and doing these tweaks one line item at a time. The grid functions here are going to be super helpful in making you more efficient with that. That's basically what I wanted to talk about today, nice and short and sweet. The two webinars next week, if I remember correctly, I don't have them up in front of me, but I do know that the one that I'm doing on Monday is specifically on point of sale. In fact, let's just do this. Let's go ahead and go into a Oop, I closed them all. Let's go ahead and go out to our website at tritechretail.com, and we will go to the member portal, and we will go to the sign up for webinars. So here on the sign up for webinars, in the free section here, this will be where you can see our open listing of any and all webinars. So on this page, you can see today's was the greatness of grids. Next Mondays is point of sale flexibility. Wednesday is all about batch service tickets, and then all the rest there for the remaining month of April. So like I said, we're trying to do 2 a week. If there's anything that you'd like to suggest as far as webinar topics, definitely give me a shout at training@tritechretail.com. And if there's anything we can do for you at all, give us a call. 563-556-3556, extension 1 for sales or 2 for technical support. Be more than happy to help you out any way that we can, because in times like this, if some of you are working from home and you need some of that extra help, well, most of us are working from home right now too, as you may have just seen. So more than happy to help out any way that we can, because retail is not going to go away. It just needs to adapt. So thanks so much for your attention. Hopefully you're all doing very well and healthy, and we'll see you next week.